What is up, my friends, and welcome to another video. A couple of videos ago, I qualified for a $5,000 tournament. It was the fake cheesing video, if you guys remember. And I figured it would be very fun to just show you guys a couple of the games from the main event. So what I decided to do is I got placed in a group with 4 other pro players. I decided to just show the best game of every single series, plus give a little recap of the games that I didn't show you guys. So the group I got placed into, actually a rather difficult group. We got placed with Bunny and Creator, very strong Korean Terran and Korean Protoss player. Third player in the group was Nice, the best Taiwanese Protoss player, or Taiwanese player in general, actually, of the last, I want to say, 7 years ago, when he surpassed Haas, who is one of the OG cheese masters. You guys might like him as well, seeing as you're here on this YouTube channel right now. The fourth player is going to be Elazer, Premier Tournament champion in the past, still one of the top 5 Zerg players in Europe. It's kind of hard to tell whether he's like 3, 4, or 5. I feel like they're all quite close. I would probably rank him at number 4, below Cyril, Rayner, and Lambo. That sounds about right. And he is going to be my first opponent of the series, or of the tournament, rather. So, against Elazer, I usually have a pretty good time playing, mostly because... Actually, I would say it's 2 reasons. So, first of all, I usually have a pretty good read on his playstyle. I think he is a little bit more of a predictable player, which I like playing against. And the reason for that is because a lot of players play StarCraft 2 in a more logical way. I guess that is the most reasonable way to put it. So they will always go for good build orders no matter what. Whereas it's not necessarily that my build orders are bad, but I'm definitely more willing to do suboptimal builds, like when it comes to resource management or just crazy strategies in general. And what that allows me to do is to not necessarily blind counter, because they'll still scout, but I'm able to do more ridiculous counters, I guess, to certain things. So Elazer, he's very stylistic, he's a little more predictable, likes to do the same build orders a lot, and I'm just gonna go out of my way and do crazy stuff to counter whatever he does, even if it's not necessarily an optimal build order, right? And second of all, I think he also doesn't really like playing against me anymore, which just gives me a mental advantage. It's a thing that you need to use when you have it. Every single pro player is going to have this, trust me. There's always a couple players that you just don't want to play against that much. Like, I don't like playing against certain Protoss players that play too defensive, for example. Really not my jam. And then when I see them, I'm already going to be like, oh no, I'm playing against Guy. You're always going to have it against someone and it's going to be unpleasant. Now here, I noticed that Elazer was going to go for a quick lair, so I just decided to go in with my Reaper and Hellion. As you can see, he didn't make any units at all until those 2 roaches just now. Hellion, I think, got 3 or 4 drone kills. Reaper got 1 or 2 as well. Now, I did misread him here already. So I mentioned that I usually have a good read on his strategies. Here, I was honestly completely wrong. I was expecting one of 2 strategies here. I was expecting this to be either 2-base fast Mutalisk or a really fast Roach all-in without a lair. So what I was thinking is, I'm gonna go for a Hellbat Marauder attack. If he's gonna go for a Mutalisk, then I'll be able to kill him because he's not gonna have enough units. If he's gonna go for an early Roach attack, I would have the Marauders. That's a really good insight into my mindset playing here. Like I mentioned, I really don't mind doing builds that aren't necessarily optimal, but they just work against what my opponent's doing. I was expecting those 2 strategies, so I just came up with a weird build that would be pretty good against both of them. Sadly for me, that's not what he did, and that's gonna turn this game into something extremely funky, because now I'm playing Mass Marauder from 2-base and a Viking, and I'm doing a Hellion drop. The reason for the Hellion drop is because I noticed that, you know, I was not going to be able to get through the roaches. He had too many roaches already. Probably was building roach speed as well, right? That's what the lair was for. So I figured I might as well drop these Hellions. I'm using the Viking to clear the vision, make sure there's no Overlord there. And then at home, I just have a bunch of Marauders standing behind the wall, which is hopefully going to be enough to make sure that I don't die to the roach timing. Now, let's be honest here, this is not a good situation for me. I feel like I got a really good scout off, right? My Reaper Hellion early on got some good damage, but this build is so inefficient that the follow-up for me is going to be quite bad. So the damage I'm doing here, really very, very necessary. If I didn't do this, I would be strongly behind. Now, I don't know, I kind of felt like the game was pretty even with this. Kind of depending on what his follow-up was going to be. Like, if he was indeed going to go for a Roach attack, then these Marauders are all of a sudden going to be super useful, right? If he would go for, let's say, Ravager Link follow-up, then all of a sudden the Marauders are not going to be as good, and you would rather have had Marines. Now, this was very sneaky by me. The Roaches were in position, but I don't think he realized that I was just going to, you know, go around there, so I get 3 additional Roaches. And this really was good damage by me. I feel like these Hellions probably were kind of doomed to not do that much for the rest of this game, but here we actually managed to find a good amount of damage, and that was great. Now, I'm not quite sure if you guys can tell, so I'm just going to keep you up to date on how I feel like I'm playing. I think as a spectator, it's actually pretty hard to see whether someone is in the flow or not, right? Like, I'm not sure if you guys are going to know that I'm going to tell you guys that I'm playing bad or playing good. What I can tell you guys is that I was playing very shaky here. And the mechanics were not actually that great on my side. I felt like I needed more time to do all the tasks. And I think it's mostly just because I was a little nervous, to be honest. Whenever I play tournaments, I do tend to get a little nervous. I was actually going to warn you guys at the start that I forgot to do that, but that I'm probably going to be a bit more spammy in this video than usual. That's just something I would do when I'm nervous, and that's also the reason why I felt like my mechanics were not as good on this day. So far, I feel like we've kept it together reasonably well. As you can see, the resources are low. We got our third base at a decent time. I think some timings might have hit a little bit too late. Like, my third base could have probably been faster. Maybe the E-base could have been faster or whatever. Not quite sure anymore, but that's anyway how I felt like I was playing. Now, this was a little confusing to me because I saw him morph Ravagers, and it felt like he was sending just a million units across the map. So I bunkered up. I was sure I was about to get hit by an attack, which I really didn't mind the idea of because I felt like I was pretty secure here. But then I saw the infestation pit and just a lot of links, so I think it was probably not the right idea by me to go so defensive. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to send out a massive drop. Something very important that I kind of mentioned just before as well is that Marauders, they are super good against Roaches. They are not really good against the other stuff, right? So against Ravagers and Link, the Ravagers are not armored anymore. Roaches are armored. When you morph them into Ravagers, they're no longer armored. So Marauders don't do bonus damage against them, neither against the Links. So even though they're good at tanking Banelings, if it's just Ravager Link, the Marauders are really just not that great of a unit to have. So for that reason, I needed to wait with any kind of attack I wanted to do until I had more Marines. Now, I can spoil you guys a little bit here. I do not have combat shields yet. I also don't have it in production yet, because all this time I just thought that I had it building. That's really so classic. Like, it's such an important upgrade, but for some reason it's so easy to forget. And then you always just assume it's on the way, right? Now here I'm gonna go for a very, very classic uThermal strategy, and that is just a super simple 1-2. My favorite way to move out ever. I feel like moving out just straight up is pretty difficult because then you get biled. You play against Protoss, they're just going to force you to siege all the time. So I kind of just like to do a big drop somewhere else, draw their army, and then go in. And now we have a fantastic siege position over here. Now my army looks decent. That's a really good Blinding Cloud by Elazer though. My army looks decent, but once again, guys, there's no combat shields over here. I think the upgrades are even, should be 1-1 against 1-1. But now we've cleared out the links. Stimming forward without combat shields, very, very scary. But Ravagers, very expensive targets. They absolutely pop like balloons when you get on top of them as well. And just with this push, we are going to be able to win the game. Even though this game looked pretty one-sided, if you look at the bank over here, 2,300 minerals for Elazer. Definitely fair to say there was some macro issues on his part. I feel like with my macro skills, probably shouldn't have been able to win this game that easily, but I'm going to be very happy with it. Game number 2 was an incredibly goofy game where I once again misread his strategy. I went for my 4-racks Marine-only build, expecting him once again to do the early Roach attack on this very small map. He ended up going for the same build as game number 1 instead, so it was easy for him to defend my attack with Roaches. After this, I figured out going into a macro game would be too difficult, so I went for a 2-base double factory tank SCV pool. Which is kind of ridiculous against Zerg, to be honest, but he didn't have enough Banelings, so I managed to push through and take the first series of the day 2-0. Series number 2 is going to be against Nice, and from this series I'm going to be showing you guys game number 2. In general, this entire series was probably the most goofy thing I've played in a tournament in a while. Nice, if you guys don't know him, he is... I don't even really know how to describe his playstyle. What I can tell you about him is that he was actually one of the players that I struggled with a disproportionate amount, I would say. Taiwanese players have their own style. A lot of them are like super cheesy. Nice is kind of different in the way where He's a bit more in the middle, so he's like, he plays a bit weird and cheesy, but still kind of plays, you know, into macro games, and I found it really hard to play against, because what happens for me is that if I would play a macro game myself, like let's say I play a completely standard macro game, then he would do like a weird build that I didn't understand, and it would be difficult for me. If I was the one cheesing him, then it would usually be bad for me, because his builds are like, they're cheesy, but not all in. So he kind of has the upper hand in the build order war there. So he was a very tricky player for me to play against. And I was sure that this was going to continue. I could totally win 2-0. I could lose 2-0, but I knew this was going to be a difficult one. So wasn't exactly sure what to do with my build orders. This game, I am going to go for a double gas regular build. I have really been enjoying to play 3 Reaper, 2 Hellion attacks against Protoss. This is mostly because players don't really play a lot of Stargate these days. This build would really be terrible against Stargate because they make 1 Oracle and then all your units are useless. But since they pretty much always play Blink, what kind of tends to happen is that you just run through their units and kill probes, and it sets you up for the rest of the game pretty nicely. So that's kind of what I was hoping for. It looks like he is going to go for a normal expansion. His response to double gas, is a very important thing to note, is that he went for a battery on the natural. Now, you don't want to draw conclusions from this right away, because what you would expect is that since he built the battery in the natural, he's not going to have it in the main. But you have players that build 2 batteries. Now, objectively, it's bad to build 2 batteries, but what can happen is that since you just assume they won't have another one in the main, you run by, let's say you lose 1 or 2 units on the way up, you arrive at the main mineral line, and then there's also a battery over there, meaning that you're stuck, probably going to lose more units, and you won't kill a single probe, and then it was all of a sudden worth it, right? So you can call it a bad decision, but at the same time, it can work out really well for them. Now, I think because it is Phoenix Scout, he should know that I'm going to go for the 5-unit push. Mostly because he saw another Hellion finish. I don't think he saw the extra Reapers here. Now, we already have a good amount of information from the start. His opening was Adept into Sentry because of that hallucinated Phoenix. He also does not have a Reaper wall because he went back up to the high ground with the Adept against my initial Reaper. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for him to position his units. Now here we're just going to go in and dive probes like I said. Here I'm going to go for Reapers into the main base. There's no wall off here and there is no battery, which is absolutely fantastic. That means that we are going to get the damage that I wanted. Or well, I mean, I think we traded 3 units for 3 probes or maybe 4 probes and a decent amount of mining time. It's actually pretty good because, to be fair, those Hellions wouldn't really have gotten anything done later on in the game. So I think this is all right. Now, my typical follow for this build is to go for Banshees, and I'm once again going to go for that kind of 1-2 setup, but a little earlier. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to send up Banshees into whatever base does not have a shield battery. Okay, that's pretty much what it is. And then, when they're distracted, you send in the tank push. Now here, I wanted to go for the exact same strategy, kind of bait his units to the low ground there, and then go up into the high ground and try to see if I can kill any probes. We're going to kill 1 here. And I'm not even sure if I noticed this before, but we do see that he went for a Robo before going for a Twilight. Or a Stargate, right? But yeah, more likely a Twilight, of course. And this is kind of an unusual choice, and this is already the kind of stuff that I'm talking about with that his playstyle is a little weird, it's a little cheesy, but not necessarily all in. So I want to attack him here, but at the same time, he went for a Robo first, which means he's probably going to have Immortals or maybe already Colossi out, and that sounds incredibly unpleasant to me. But this was a tricky situation here. Now, I do have my second barracks finished already, so I can go for some upgrades. I'm going to get a bunch of tanks out. My first Banshee is already waiting in the top right corner. If you look at the minimap over there, second Banshee is going to go. The reason why it's waiting, by the way, very simple, is that you cannot kill probes under a battery with 1 Banshee. If you have 2 Banshees, all of a sudden you one-shot probes and the battery doesn't get the heal, so you can get a lot of damage done. Now, luckily for me, he lost the earlier Adepts a little clunkily, so there were only 2 Adepts in that drop, meaning I didn't really lose a lot to it. I think, I don't know, 3 SCVs or something, or maybe 2, yeah, just not that bad, right? Especially because we killed 3 Adepts earlier. Now we're going to go in with the Banshees, and then at the same time, we're going to go forward with the tanks. I actually sieged it here, probably because I was a little afraid. I should have moved out here already. I mean, it's a little bit of hindsight, right? But this would have been a good timing to move out. The reason I didn't, I'm sure, is because he went for a Robo first. So I was probably expecting him to already have a Colossus out. Now here, I saw that the Robo Bay was only just now building, so that opens up a lot of opportunities. Now, this absolutely blew my mind, and we're once again going to go back to the fact that he is a bit of a strange player here with his builds, right? He went for a Robo into a Stargate, which is probably the least likely order that you ever see Protoss make their tech building. So what he did is he just saw my starport, making cloak, right? I mean, it could have been interference matrix technically, but more likely going to be cloak. And he figured he would just make a Phoenix, kill the Banshees right away, and then I don't know what his follow-up plan was, playing Phoenix Colossus maybe or so. Now, thinking back, I maybe could have made a good read here. Here I was surprised, but I was pretty sure this Colossus was fake. First I was like, wait, is Chronoboost that good that his Colossus was already finished after I saw the Robobay building? Then I went for a scan. You can see that Colossus is a little bit discolored, meaning that it is indeed an hallucination. Cool play by my opponent, but I did read into it well enough to keep pushing over here. Now, this is a strange situation. When you play against Colossus, tanks are good against Colossi. I mean, you could also be making Disruptors here, but realistically, you should be building Colossi, I think. Tanks are good against them, but you can't push forward against them too much because Colossi kill Marines so fast. If you're not sieged, you allow 2 swipes, you could lose 8 Marines and your entire push is gone. Now here, if I had Stim, I would be able to kill that Colossus, but I actually decided to go for something a little funky myself, and that is that I went for combat shields before Stim. Now, my army is pretty big here, but not having Stim is actually a bit of an issue because I need to be able to Stim forward. Since I can't, I have to take this very, very slowly. And actually, just to be very critical of myself here, the combat shields seemed like a very good idea because I wanted to go for a fast tank push and have my Marines be tank here. Now, this is why it was a terrible idea, and I realized that at this point, is that Colossi 2-shot Marines anyway, even with combat shield. Doesn't matter if you have it or not. So my Marines were going to be slightly better against the rest of his units, but they would have been okay anyway, right? But against the Colossus, they're just as good, but now I don't have Stim. If I had Medivacs, probably a slightly different story as well. But yeah, I have to criticize myself here a little bit for sure for getting that combat shield's really not the best idea. Now, this is such a crazy situation because I'm just standing in front of his base with a million bunkers, a million siege tanks. Because he has Colossi and Immortal, well, I think it's 1 Immortal actually only, and 1 Immortal and 1 Disruptor, I can't really walk forward very easily. And now he has a freaking Void Ray, which means that I have to be super, super careful. Like, every time I walk forward to try and kill the Void Ray, his Colossus beams at my Marines. But if my Marines are not forward, then I'm gonna start losing a tank to it and stuff. So here he goes for a little Disruptor shot. Wasn't able, well, I kind of dodged it in time, but also not entirely. Lost a couple of Marines there, but as long as I don't lose anything too pivotal, that's going to be okay. But yeah, now he has second Void Ray out already, so this is going to be incredibly tricky. There, I should have definitely stimmed to try and kill it, I think. Was a little bit too afraid of the Colossal swipes, but probably would have got on that. Obviously, you can't really know that in advance. Now, at this point, I'm starting to get my Vikings out, which is going to be very, very nice. I have a tank rallying through his third base. I'm looking at it on the minimap, but I guess he also didn't realize it, so that's okay. I guess this entire position is walled off, so it's a little bit difficult. There we get Void Ray number 1. Sadly for us, he did have an energy recharge, so that is going to save that Void Ray for a little while longer. Turrets are going to be a very good addition here. Once again, a cool idea in retrospect is that I should have gotten turret range here. Now, I know that sounds absolutely insane, but turret range would have probably helped me a lot against these Void Rays and stuff. So that's, I mean, it's obviously a pretty ridiculous thing to do instead of getting +1 attack or whatever to get freaking turret range in this situation, but it really would have helped me out quite nicely. So that's another pretty good Disruptor shot. I'll be honest, this series was very hard to micro because against Taiwan, you always play multiple games on US West, which is my worst server, felt very clunky. Now that tank, I thought I actually lost it, but somehow my Marines got there in time, so that is quite nice. All of my tanks are low HP. Gonna start building even more turrets here. And I really realized at this point that there was just not gonna be any pushing forward here at all, right? Like every time I push forward, I feel like I just lose some stuff, so I kind of just want to sit here. I'm taking my own third base behind this, and yeah, I mean, this is a pretty awesome situation, to be honest. Like, this is a very cool state of the game to have. Obviously, incredibly stressful here, just sitting in front of his base. Now, I think as soon as I get enough Vikings out, like maybe like 5 or so, I think there's exactly 5 I have over here. Well, now it's 4, sadly for me. I will start being able to go forward a little better, right? Because I can shut down the Void Rays better. He has enough batteries to make that a little more difficult. I only just now noticed that this third base is barely mining, by the way, which is really good news for me. Lost a couple of Marines over there, but nothing too big. Like, I really think the whole setup is the most important of this, right? Like, like I have the Liberators, the tanks, the bunkers, and the turrets. As long as those are there, we're gonna be okay. It's really not like I can stim forward into his units anyway. So yeah, I don't really know if it matters if I lose a couple of units here and there to disruptors. Maybe it's even good for me to, you know, get the disruptors away from my tanks and stuff. Now here I wanted to stim in. It's so hard to do it under the batteries plus warpins though. Now at this point the batteries are drained. He does still have a very powerful full energy sentry down there. Actually, it looks like it's 2 of them, because, yeah, exactly, it is 2 of them. Now, he's going to lose 1 of them, does get a force field off. I do lose 2 Vikings for it, which is quite painful. And as you can tell, it is even now still so hard to get into here. I'm trying to make sure those Zealots in the back don't get on top of my tanks at the same time. That one Immortal is doing a fantastic job against my Marauders. Luckily for me, barely walked in range of the tank, so we were able to take that down. Now, he's able to warp in a lot of Zealots, and Zealots are extremely good against tanks, but the thing is, I have Liberators and tanks further away, so he keeps having to sacrifice a lot of units to even try get on top of those tanks. Now, there he got them, but he lost 8 Zealots for it. He has 3 Disruptors, but now his third base is going to be forfeit. I'm pretty sure every single Void Ray has finally died, and now, I mean, he can try recall over here, doesn't actually have the energy yet, but he decides he can no longer win. GG is called, and this was an incredibly strange way to win the game, because I didn't even really go and kill him. He was also building Tempest. I just won by basically sitting in front of his base. The other 2 games went a bit differently. The first game of the series was unfortunately a one-sided loss. I wanted to go for a 1-base all-in, but he also went for a semi-committed cheese himself. This allowed him to have more than enough units to stomp me and take the first game. Game number 3, on the other hand, was actually quite insane. I had a horrible start to the point where I should have lost instantly, but I found some incredible value while pushing with my units. We had a literal 5-minute lasting micro battle where I was macroing and microing my heart out on sometimes as little as 10 units, re-sieging tanks and liberators, juggling units in medevacs, but in the end, it sadly wasn't enough. I barely lost the game after what felt like an heroic effort, and we lost the second series 2-1. The third series is going to be against Creator, and from this series I'll be showing you guys game number 2 as well. Now, Creator is arguably the strongest player in this group. He is a bit inconsistent with his results. I feel like he kind of goes from being a decent pro player to being absolute gold tier sometimes, maybe like once a year or so. It's kind of hard to tell, you know, in which phase of its cycle it's in, but I feel like he was the strongest player in the group anyway. And for this game, we are going to be going with a Proxy Turax Marine. Now, I'm still just not entirely convinced of this build. I feel like it looks very good sometimes, but then I don't know, for some reason the follow-up is always awkward. Like, you don't really have a big pressure follow-up because you have a late factory. So kind of what tends to happen is that they can be either greedy or very aggressive behind it, and you can't really scout it. So maybe if you do this as like a research, or how would I say this, a prepared build against a specific opponent. So let's say, I mean, it's kind of hard because no one really does this build against Protoss, but let's say it's more common against Protoss, or I do it multiple times. I can kind of see what players' responses are, and then if I like what their response is, then I can start doing it against them, basically. Now here we actually have a special case. Most of the time, what you'll see is them just trying to defend the Nexus on the low ground, which I think is the proper response, by the way. Here, he is not just defending the high ground. I think he didn't even build the Nexus, probably not even a cancel, just straight up didn't build it. And then he went for a battery on the high ground. Now, it's really hard to walk up a high ground with a Zealot with Marines, as you can see. He's already pulling the probes too. Now, he went to the low ground here, which I really didn't mind at all, because that's a lot of mining time. Still loses the Zealot as well. And now I'm going to transition as fast as I possibly can. So what this is going to turn into is me, I'm going to say probably, because he could take an expansion somewhere else with the Proteus out on the map, right? Probably expanding faster. And him having more tech. I think that's probably what it's going to come down to, right? So most of the time, we see a Robo. I've always been expecting someone to do a proxy Stargate against this, but so far it hasn't happened, so wasn't really considering it. Now here I actually made a little bit of an adaptation from how I usually play this, and I'm curious if any of you have caught this already. So typically what I would do is I would scout with one of the barracks. A barracks is like the best scout you can have, by the way. Like, if there's a potential that you can make a build where you proxy a barracks just to fly it in their base to scout, I don't know what build you would need to do to make this, you know, feel somewhat optimal resource-wise, but it's a thing that you can do. but here I decided not to do it because I just felt like I needed some more Marines. I mean, he went straight for the one base. Here we find this probe before he built a Nexus, and it really looked like he was going to build a Nexus there, right, with that probe positioning. So that is a really nice scout. He still hasn't broken through. At this point, we also know 100% for sure, unless he already took another Nexus somewhere else, which is extremely doubtful, so let's say 99% sure, that he went for tech plus gateways before the Nexus. Because if he went for a Nexus straight away, it would have already been pretty much finished, right? Even if he would have built in the corner over there. Now there we see an Immortal. Whether he built extra gates already, we can't really know at this point. Now, one thing that does suck about proxy barracks rushing these days is that you can't cancel or salvage the bunker anymore. If the bunker gets attacked, it cancels the salvage, so you don't actually get the money back. So bunker rushes were definitely significantly nerfed because of that. Now, as you can see, our expansion is, what is that going to be? Maybe like 80 seconds faster than his, but our tech is behind, and we also don't have a way to get information anymore from this point on, right? Like, it's going to be a long time before we can move out. I decided to, scout as much as I could. SCV scouted one corner, this Marine scouting another one. Now I'm going for Stim. And the follow-up plan was to hit a Stim tank timing push, ideally with 3 tanks. 3 tanks, little tip for you guys, pretty important tip actually. If you're not sure when to push, so let's say you're not following a super strict build order, then 3 tanks is actually the perfect timing, because 3 tanks is the amount where you can reliably shoot stuff through batteries. So typically, this was really nice for me to have this Cyclone, by the way, because that's going to mean that this drop is not going to do anything. It's actually a very cool drop. Honestly, respect. It's something that I've done against Protoss before. Little harassment at the front. He knew I wasn't going to have Stim or anything, so he just wanted to force field my mineral line. But I had my Cyclone and Marines in position, so we killed the sentry, forced a recall, and that's okay. But if you have 3 tanks, you can very reliably shoot Immortals and Stalkers through batteries without them diving on your tanks too easily. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here. If he still had the Prism in the corner of my base, like let's say he didn't go for a recall, maybe I wouldn't have moved out, but now I saw the Prism with that Marine at the front as well, I believe. Now I felt a bit more confident moving out. This is extremely scary against someone that has Immortals. I feel like playing Protoss becomes very easy when you leave them alone. I feel like playing Protoss is 10 times harder when you attack them viciously. If you just let them take extra Nexi and Chrono Boost all their workers, it becomes very, very scary. Now here I was not happy with what I saw, because 1 Immortal Prism, a couple Zealots as well, sentries, he was forward in position. I didn't really feel like we could break through anymore, so that's pretty painful. Now we did get that Stalker over there, which is great. Saturation back at home is not fantastic, because I do have a couple of SCVs at the front. Now I'm gonna try to do the same thing as I did against Nice here. It's a way different situation for sure, because this is way later, and we got Stim instead of combat shields, but we're gonna try to just set up a bunch of bunkers in front of his base. Now, he got some good force fields in there, but I did manage to escape with Marines still. He has some stuff behind me. Luckily for me, my tanks and Marines are gonna be strong enough to hold off this first attack. This was actually a pretty great hold initially. I moved my units to the right to make sure I wasn't too close to the batteries anymore. So I have 3 tanks left. My supply here, though, was incredibly low, and this is when I started getting a little bit afraid. That bunker is going to fall pretty much instantly as well, and now I think it's a really good timing for me to back off. Looks like I'm not quite going to go for it yet. He still has that Immortal in the back, too. Now I'm going to unsiege that tank and try to run away. So for both of us, this is a very weird situation, and funnily enough, it's a very similar situation. So what I estimated from his position is that he didn't manage to build a whole lot besides 3 gateways and a robo. Which means that his follow-up is not necessarily going to be this strong. Probably didn't have a robo bay yet. Probably didn't have a Twilight Council yet. And my situation is actually just exactly the same. I have too many siege tanks. Okay, like, you can't move out with an army where you have mass siege tanks and no bio, because you're just gonna die to Zealots, right? Like, you need a big bio army to be able to deal with Zealots, to be able to deal with stuff like Archons. So we're in a very similar position where our armies are just non-efficient. We're not going to be able to use it. Both of our armies are too scary to attack into, and both of our economies suck compared to what it's supposed to be. So you guys tell me who's winning right now. I wouldn't know. Now, I felt like my setup ended up becoming pretty decent. I mean, I'm saturated on my natural, not the 4th gas yet, admittedly. And I don't know. I felt like I was still kind of okay here. Starport was a little bit late. I made 1 Viking to deal with the Prism, which is nice. Got a turret at the front because I was terrified of dying to DTs, which, Anyone that's played enough against Protoss will know. Was looking for the prism, didn't actually manage to find it, but there it is. Still hiding in the corner. Probably still has like an immortal inside or something, I was thinking. So we're gonna try to chase this down. Should be able to kill it. And there, if you guys heard that, that was an unload sound, and we didn't see anything. What does that mean? He's going for Dark Templars. So the turret at the front is going to be very nice. I guess a turret in the main would be good as well, and I'm going to build it because I'm scared. But theoretically, since we killed the prism, we should be pretty safe here. Now, we also got to see that there was still no hidden expansion in the bottom right there, which I guess is pretty nice to see. I mean, it would have been pretty crazy by him to take that, but I mean, I would have done it, right? So maybe someone else could as well. So now we're going to go for the third command center. Our army looks a little bit insane because I think I have literally 7 siege tanks for, I don't know, less than 20 marines or so. Like, it's a pretty ridiculous army. That said, if he is playing a Colossus style, so let's say instead of taking a third base, he went for extra gases, made Immortal Colossus. I think we saw a prism on the minimap there, exactly. Then my army is all of a sudden going to be very good. Put a couple of SCVs with this as well, because I really wanted to make sure to keep the pressure on. Now I see a counterattack, and the counterattack is bigger than I had hoped. I could have decided to go for the big base trade here. It really just depends on exactly what he would have had at home. The thing is, and this is something that might sound weird if you watched StarCraft a long time ago, Terran just really sucks in base trades these days. Terran used to be the ultimate base trade race. Now it's just by far the worst, so I didn't really want to risk this game. I wouldn't call it laziness, but sometimes I kind of tend to be in the mindset where, okay, you know what? I'm just going to try to end this game no matter what. Kind of, I don't know if it stems from a lack of confidence in my regular game or whatever, but that's kind of how I feel sometimes, right? Like, it's okay. I'm in a potentially winning spot against this guy. This guy is very good. I would like to win. So let's just YOLO it and hope we win instead of trying to make the right decision. But realistically, he had a Dark Shrine, and Terran sucks in base trades, and I figured we were just going to go back. Whether I like the decision, I don't know. We would have to look at the replay to know if it's a good decision, right? Like, imagine if we would have killed him for sure, like his entire base, I mean, then maybe I would have gone for it, because I can kind of rally units up on the high ground, and blah, 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 right? Like, very slowly survive. Now, instead, I decided to play a little bit slower, siege all my tanks at the front. This is a very good dropper, killing a lot of probes, which is fantastic. Now we're going to go into the main. I heard a DT swipe, and I heard a recall at the same time. So it sounds like he recalled to his natural. We're going to kill a lot of probes in the main base as well, which is great. I am losing a couple units to Dark Templar swipes. Now here I learned that he most likely did not have blink, else he would have blinked there already. Now we're going to get into the third base. This third base looks pretty meagerly saturated, which is good news. If this was a fully saturated third base, I wouldn't have been as happy with this. But now I'm going to be able to take my own third base. We killed a lot of probes, and that is definitely a very, very good move for us. Now, our army is still, you might be surprised with this really, but I'm not kidding. Our army is still way too awkward to attack with, because this army is just absolutely terrible against Zealot Archon. We saw an Archon earlier. I don't know if it was hallucinated or not. I don't actually remember. I remember thinking it was real anyway, so I didn't want to move out into Zealot Archon. And here we're going to go for the Ghost Academy. I'm actually pretty sure... Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure I already built it. It was in my natural, and I realized that too in the game. Upgrades are looking pretty healthy. We're going to get Ghost online now, and I thought from this point on we should probably play it a little more careful. I was really on top of my mindset in this entire tournament in general. I just felt like it's not even really about having confidence in myself. I just felt like I wanted to believe in myself to do what is the right move instead of YOLOing. So here I really thought objectively it would be good to sit back a little bit, build up the army, wait for him to attack. If he was going to attack, use our economic advantage that we got from that drop earlier, and just play it that way. And we don't have to deviate from our style that much, because we can still attack ruthlessly later on, but for now it was a good moment to sit back. Now I have a lot of gas over here. It's kind of an awkward thing to play Terran with the gas curve sometimes. Like, Terran always spends so much gas early on, and later on it spends nothing. So you kind of want to have too much gas, but then I think my armory and my upgrades were a little late as well, so I couldn't really spend it, so it ended up becoming a little awkward. I have all these mules that I could drop, but I was also scared of DTs, and since I was probably going to attack pretty soon, I didn't want to, you know, run out of scans, so it was a bit of an awkward situation, to be honest. Probably could have done a little better there, maybe spammed a couple more turrets and saved fewer scans. I think that would have been the right way to go about it. And that was a pretty big army over there on the right side. I felt like I noticed something in pro games in TVP recently, where split pushing seems to have become a little better again. So I was kind of planning to use that as my macro strategy. So instead of going for like really brutal attacks, well, I mean, I'm still going to go for brutal attacks, but I just wanted to make sure to always have a secondary army. This army serves multiple purposes. So first of all, if your opponent has nothing on that side of the map, you can run in and kill a base. That's ideal situation, right? But perhaps more importantly is that the second army is going to be able to stop run-bys on the other side. One of the easiest way, I think everyone that's played Terran in high-level games will notice, or even, you know, just any ranked game really. You move out with your entire army, 50 Zerglings or 12 Zealots run into your base, and you just die. Because your reinforcing units just don't kill 12 Zealots, right? Like, it becomes incredibly hard. So then if you move out on one side, you're gonna have to go all the way back. But if you have a little army on each side, like right now it would be really hard for him to run by on the right side because my entire army is there. But then I also still have the little group on the left side, right? So that way I kind of secure myself against the run-bys while being able to do some damage at the same time. Here my army is pretty gargantuan. It's still really not the best army ever against Zealot Archon, but he does also have some Colossus, which is going to make this a little better. My mines really could have been positioned better. Hopefully I'm going to fix that. I'm not quite sure if I do. Here what would be really nice to do, by the way, is put the mines on the right side for the flank. That's actually a fantastic way to go about it here. Yeah, the mines, honestly, pretty poorly positioned by me. I see it quite clearly now. Those mines are... I mean, especially if Zealots charge on my tanks, I feel like those mines are more likely to do damage to my own tanks. Those mines in the middle are not really going to be doing anything here. Probably did a lot of damage to my own marines. We do get mopped up here. However, I don't think this is really as bad as it looks. I feel like we killed a lot of units there. Our eco is pretty decent, and we still had a small army. But yeah, especially if we had better mine positioning there, that could have been nice. Maybe I should have push the right side of the fourth base instead of in between. I feel like being in between is really nice with siege tanks because you can cut them off. But maybe it was already a little bit too late in the game for that. Now, all in all, really still don't think it was that bad. I still got a really decent amount of supply at home. I'm going to take a fourth base now. I am low on Vikings. That is a bit of a problem because we need Vikings against Colossus. But we still have, I think I see like 6-7 ghosts there. Albeit out of energy, but ghosts are very, very good now. Actually, after the recent ghost buff to the HP, I felt way more confident in TVP late games because the Ghost became more of just a strong fighting unit. Like, it's actually become a little bit more of a tanky unit, so I like to just build a lot of Ghosts and actually just kind of use them as army. Like, you can EMP everything and then you can use them as army. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie there, this is very funny. I saw that Marine walk into my army and my instinct was to kill it because it was a changeling. Because it was such an awkward Marine coming from a weird angle, but obviously Protoss doesn't have changelings, but that's what my instinct told me. Now, this was a very important check over here. I clicked on his units. That's a tip I always give you guys. Everyone forgets about that sometimes, including me, of course. Always click on your opponent's units to see the upgrades. Here, I saw that he had +1 only. Well, I think I'm already at 2-1. So my army was going to be significantly stronger in the long run. And I kind of started getting the idea that maybe he was... I mean, you can't really call it all-in. But he is all-inning in a certain way where he just wants to have a really big army to crush my army at all times. Meaning that if I get decent enough trades, right? Kind of like the last one where... I mean, ideally better than the last one for sure. But if it's at least as good as the last one, that is probably okay. Where you just want to trade out and not get your army completely obliterated. Make sure you trade, you have your eco, and then you can win the game that way, right? And especially with the upgrades, it's going to get better and better for me. Hopefully we kill that prism with that mine. It's kind of hard to see. Now at this point he's getting disruptors, which is going to make it pretty hard to go up against here. So what I did is, you can already see it on the minimap, is I'm joining up with the rest of my army so we can flank it, right? That was the idea here. I didn't want to get stuck there and lose that entire portion of the army, so I brought the rest over, and he actually did the exact same. Probably had an observer if I had to guess, so he could see me join up already. Now these kind of big fights are very scary, and honestly I do not have enough Vikings for this at all. So I'm already adding a second starport here, and I'm running away. Running away is genuinely a hard decision to make because it just feels bad. You're going to lose units on the retreat and stuff. But against 4 Colossus with only 3 Vikings, it really did not seem like a fight I wanted to take. And I think I'm really happy with how patiently I played this. Another mistake that I definitely caught myself doing here, by the way, which once again stems a little bit from my lack of confidence in the late game, is that I only went for one eBay. Playing one eBay only is a little bit ridiculous, to be honest. I just kind of figured that the game was going to end before, either by me doing like a desperate attack or him attacking into me. Wasn't necessarily preparing for the full-on late game still, and that is just something subconscious, you know. I could have done a lot better there. Should have just gone for that double eBay and it would have been nice. Now at this point still, I am missing some Vikings. I think I don't know if any more are joining, but I have 5 here against 4 Colossus, which is really not good enough. A couple of Marines get shaved off there, but we do get a Colossus in return, which is fantastic. Now I figured we were just going to stim into this base and see what we can get. That's a poor micro decision by me there. What I should have done there was go for the Disruptor. Playing on the US West here, so it's kind of hard to make those mini micro decisions, but it was alright. Now this fight also looked pretty decent because the Colossus were a little late. That Disruptor gets a pretty decent volley. I could have used another EMP on those Archons. I thought I EMP'd them enough, but barely not. In the end, we mop up almost his entire army after killing his 5th base and denying his 6th base, securing our own 5th. So all in all, this was once again a pretty good trade for us. And I really just want to add here that I was feeling quite proud of this game already because, yeah, I can say it so many times. It's just the case for me. Like, sometimes I really just don't trust myself enough, right? So I was happy that I was making the correct decisions and just playing the macro game and kind of just, you know, going with what I thought would be right instead of my desperate attacks or whatever, and that it was actually working out well enough. Like, even here, I would guess that our supply is probably about even. He might have a little more supply than me, but our eco is definitely going to be better, and our upgrades are definitely better as well. Now, at this point, I don't need that many Vikings anymore, because he only has 1 Colossus left. This seemed like a good fight for me to take, as long as I split well against the Disruptors. There we go. Pretty nice fight there. We're going to be able to kill the Immortals and the Disruptor, and that's actually the most important. Stalkers, this might sound a little crazy to you because they're only 50 gas. Stalkers are also considered a high-value target in PvP. Normally. Not in this game, but normally they are, and I'll explain you why. So, usually how Protoss players play these days is they'll go for 4 gases only, even on like 6 bases. They have like a core group of Stalkers, and then they just make a million Zealots with it. So they kind of just always have like the 10-12 Stalkers behind that snipe your Vikings, snipe your Medevac, snipe units and blink away, stuff like that. So if they ever lose them, they don't actually have enough gas to rewarp them. In this case, he does have enough gas to rebuild them, but he would still rather be building Colossi, Disruptors, maybe even Archons, right? So even here, killing the Stalkers would be great. He still has them alive, but at least killing the Immortals and the Disruptor in that last fight, and the Colossus, of course, was definitely quite nice. Now here I went back to what I was doing before, is going for that split army style. I really think it's extremely good to play this way. This game, I didn't do it perfectly for sure, because I had that one fight in the bottom where I wish my army was already together, right? I had one fight in the bottom right where if my army was together, maybe we could have crushed him. So you can play a little better than this game for sure, but still, all in all, I was quite happy with this, and now I decided to go for the same move again. Now, I did notice that the right side army here was missing a couple ghosts. I guess I did lose a lot of them in that first fight, and I didn't actually rebuild them. So now we're going to attack on the right side, and I noticed the Colossus moving away in the middle there, which is a really good sign for me. We can see, okay, I thought it was pros with the Stalker. Now we're going to stim in here. I'm going to kill the Disruptor first, so we don't lose our army to 1 Disruptor shot. EMP on the Nexus, one of my all-time favorite moves. Reason why it's important is because then they can't recall, okay? It's a really scary thing running by Protoss bases because they can recall. So let's say you drop 4 Medevacs, you use your boost for it. Then if they recall a massive army, you can't get away anymore and you're going to lose 40 supply. So EMPing the Nexus, if you can, really a delicious move. So now I'm falling back with my army on the right side. I have an army in the main base killing everything, and that's going to be super annoying for him to get back to, because either he has to recall and allow me to push on the right side, or he just has to let his base die. I just killed the Dark Shrine because I didn't want to bother with DTs anymore. Now here what he's trying to do is he's trying to bait me in the open area, but I realized it, so I just kept falling back, didn't want to take any unnecessary fights. Kept falling back here. Then when he finally went in, it was time to pull the SCVs. We got some nice EMPs. We have enough Vikings for the Colossus. As long as you have a little bit of a concave on your bio, you're not going to lose it all to Colossus swipes. And after 23 minutes, we have beaten one of the best Protoss players in Korea in an absolutely epic macro game. The other 2 games of the series went pretty similar to the ones against Nice. Game number 1 was a pretty close cheese game where I almost got him with some cool Proxy Marauder Hellion tactics. Skirmishes went decently until I made one big misstep going for a pylon snipe when his army was too big. I fell too far behind and I lost a couple minutes later. Game number 3, I tried one of my most trusted builds, the same one I used in the winning game against Nice in fact, but he was incredibly prepared for it, hopelessly crushing my attack and taking the series 2-1. The final series is going to be against Bunny, our first and only TVT, and at this point our series score was 1-2. Now, out of this 5-player group, 3 players advance, and I thought that if you got a 2-2 score, you would probably advance, unless you were particularly unfortunate. So, if we win this series, doesn't matter if we win it 2-0 or 2-1, I think we probably have about a 75% chance of advancing. If we lose, then... I mean, my map score is pretty good so far, because I won 2-0 and lost 1-2 twice, so my map score is 4-4, despite being 1-2. So, even if we go... if we lose this one, there might be a small chance we can advance in a tiebreaker, but obviously I would way rather win this one. Now for this TVT, I'm pretty much using my builds and knowledge that I've gathered in the qualifiers. Here you might remember my building positioning already. This is the building positioning I used in, believe, game number 2 against Nicaragua in the qualifying match, where I wanted to go for Hellions, and I built my barracks on the far side. I think I even mentioned it in that game that I really like that building positioning, so here we are gonna go for that again. Now against Bunny, I've played a couple times, not a crazy amount of times. I think I've probably won more than I've lost, if I had to guess, but it's always been a difficult opponent. I remember beating him in IM Katowice on the big stage, that was awesome. And what I remember from playing against him is that he is just... He's pretty YOLO, not in the absolutely crazy way where he goes for like insane proxies and stuff, but he's just very aggressive with his army movement. If he thinks there's an opportunity, even if, I don't know, theoretically it might not be the best idea, he will freaking go for it. In that case, he is pretty similar to me against Protoss, I suppose. And he's just very good at being aggressive in particular. So if you don't have your defenses on lock, you're probably gonna die to some drop or something at some point. Same time, I did remember beating him a lot of times with early attacks. So I don't know if that's because, you know, he's so aggressive that he doesn't focus on defense, or if, I don't know, his builds are just a little greedy, I'm not quite sure. Obviously, the last couple times I played against him were a long time ago when I was still active as a pro, so I have no idea if any of that is still the same, but I guess we'll see. Now, he's jumping in my base with a Reaper. I actually wasn't super excited seeing this, because it made me feel like he was playing... Reaper expand, and I would rather play against a double gas. Now, this was a bit of an unfortunate moment. I could be wrong. Maybe if you guys really want to see it for sure, you could go back. I felt like my Reaper attacked first, and then I got owned by the random attack delay that happens on Reaper sometimes. Once again, it could be wrong. It's either way, it doesn't really matter. It's a little bit unfortunate that I lost the Reaper. If we killed that Reaper, we would have been able to scout. Now we can't. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean... It's not the biggest deal ever, because I was going to go for Hellions anyway, so I'm pretty safe. It's really just a bit annoying, because I would love to scout. Now, this game, before you guys ask... Actually, no, ask anyway, because comments for the algorithm, am I right? If you guys are wondering what the hell my depot placement is and what the point of it is, I also don't know. I just felt like building them there, so there you go. I do think the building in the middle left is quite useful, because it's gonna spot like ravens flying to my base and stuff. So that's what I actually kind of liked. The depots below my ramp, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's nice because it doesn't take space up in your main base. I mean, if you get all in and you need to defend your main ramp, all of a sudden that depot placement is not gonna be that good. So use it at your own risk. Now, this game, I didn't feel like going for the more all-in timing attack style with the Liberators, so instead, I went for the Raven, just like I did against Nicaragua. Looks like we were gonna kill the Cyclone, but sadly for us, the medevac arrived in time, and he went for a tank drop build. Now here, I would say that we were pretty fortunate with that start, because if you have to go up against the tank drop build with their entire supporting army intact, you're gonna have a bit of a tough time, okay? But here, I believe we killed... I don't know exactly what it was. Maybe like a Reaper, a Hellion, and 3 Marines or something like this. So his tank is gonna be less protected. That's gonna be very nice. Now, I don't have anti-air yet, which is a little annoying here, so I can't really do much against the medevac. The medevac is here into the main base, gonna lose 2 Marines. It would have been very delicious if my 1 Marine would have just sniped that Cyclone over there, but it's not going to happen. Now, obviously, my Hellions are gonna be able to chase this medevac quite nicely. He's not gonna want to unload because his Cyclone's 1 HP, so this should be okay anyway. Now, once again, still feeling like I'm not playing my absolute best in these games. I felt like mechanically, like you guys might have noticed, like my SCVs being dragged across the base there with the repair still being on. Here, once again, I've had it a couple times. Yeah, just really not my best mechanical day ever. Here, that auto turret. It was a bit of a risk, to be honest. I've talked about it many times before, that Raven energy is a resource in TVT. Very, very important. There I dropped it, hoping that he wouldn't respond in time, and we do snipe that Cyclone, which is very, very nice. I already have Vikings on the way as well, so that's going to be nice. Hellions do not see a third command center, so that's interesting. I was happy seeing this Viking here, by the way, because that Viking means that he probably made a single Viking from a non-reactive starport, so that is just an inefficient way to use the starport, right? He probably did it to defend the Liberator, if I had to guess. So my choice to go for the Raven instead paid off already. And now we're just going to have more air than him, which is always very good in TVT. Admittedly, this map has not been super great for me so far. I mean, I know I won the last game we played on it, right? But at the same time, it didn't really feel like there were any particularly juicy tank spots that I could grab, which is stuff that I like to do. Like, I like to be aggressive and have my units in the opponent's face, right? But here, didn't really find any super good tank spots or something like that. Now, there my SCV scouts the landed third base, as well as some SCVs. Here we go for a scan. Now, there's a bit of a miniature tank spot over here. It really doesn't do that much, but you can kill the gas. My tank is very late, because Actually, I thought I made a tank before the Cyclone. Did I make a Cyclone first? I guess I probably did. So here we're going to be able to kill one gas, which... Yeah, I mean, any damage is good, right? But does it really matter that much? Probably not. His army is getting pretty big. And here, something important is that it looks like he didn't go for air at all. So he has 2 Ravens there. The reason he only has 2 instead of my 3 is because of that one Viking he built. So that's a little advantage there for us. But he is going to go for Medivacs, and judging by how his build looks, there's a good chance he's going to get his bio upgrades a little faster than me. And he's going to be able to stim on me. So for that reason, I really wanted to press forward, use my Raven energy more than anything else. Now, my follow-up behind is looking pretty decent, but not as good as him. And in particular, I'm sure that my upgrades are pretty far behind. Here we're going to go for the siege. Interference matrices on 3 siege tanks is great. We kill a Raven there, which is very, very nice. My Marines did take a little bit of a beating there already. Still has more tanks as well. So that was a good initial start. However, my army is really weak against the rest that he has, so that could be a little bit of a problem later on, right? Like, if the Marines stim in, that's going to be a problematic thing for sure. I'm using my Vikings to look for the Raven, by the way. We haven't actually found it yet. I think that Cyclone is going to survive. It does survive. Yeah, our army is pretty massive, but we're going to lose against Marines, most likely. Okay, so there we find the Raven. He does get both interference matrices off, sadly. I'm going to drop a bunch of auto turrets and land my Vikings over here. Unfortunately for me, that last tank did barely die. Now, my tanks are about to leave being interference matrix, so that is great. Here, what I'm going to do is sneaky land the Viking, so I can snipe that tank before my Viking or my tank dies. And I would say our supply is looking very healthy here. We are definitely going to get cleaned up at some point. Could be now, could be a little bit later. Yeah, looks like his bio got close enough to the tanks to stop my tanks from destroying them. And now we're going to have to play a little bit of a crazy game. I mean, I was gonna say unfortunate, but it's not necessarily unfortunate. It's just it's different. It's not necessarily the game I want to play. So what happens now is I have more eco, and he has all the initiative, right? Because he got stim faster. That means he's gonna get combat shields faster. He has his upgrades faster. And if you guys have ever watched Marines fight Marines down in upgrades, it's pretty disgusting. You have absolutely no chance. It's not even almost close. Like, it's just horribly one-sided to fight against those. Made a little bit of a mistake at home. Not quite sure if you guys realized, but my third was oversaturated, and that's actually an okay thing to do in TVT. In fact, it's encouraged, but you do need your 4th base on time to make use of that, and my 4th base wasn't on time. That is the problem. So I have a lot of SCVs, but I can't actually use them. That means his eco is going to catch up, and we're going to lose that advantage over here. Now, I was playing pretty aggressive here, mostly because I had the Raven energy. I thought I could really go for it. Anti-armor missile used on the Marines. Sadly for me, he already sent his entire army over here, and this was a minor disaster. Really not the biggest disaster ever, but a minor disaster, because I feel like this could have been fantastic for me. Instead, I lose some very, very high-value air units. I think, if I'm not wrong, I lost 2 Ravens and 2 Liberators there. Is that correct? Could be a little less than that, but that's what it felt like to me, and that is extremely painful. I'm going to have to siege over here. We did lose the initiative indeed. Now I'm going to go for my second factory. I was being very careful there with placing my barracks because I have a very strong tendency, which is one of my biggest mistakes, to place my barracks in such a way that my tanks can't get out of my base. If you guys do that more often, don't worry, because I'm the freaking king of that, okay? Just every single time for some reason. Here I went in a little hard. I just wanted to make sure to kill the tank, whether that was good or not. I would say probably not, to be honest, but I don't know. It's so hard to break a siege if you don't have ravens anymore. If I had my ravens there, that would have been a delicious fight. But I don't, so I traded like, I don't know, 12 marines for a tank or something. Doesn't sound that great, but all in all, it was probably okay. Now at this point, I felt like maybe I could finally take some initiative back, so I'm moving out on the map with my marines, taking my fourth base as well, putting a planetary there. I had one Viking that I can use to kind of scout for drops, which is great. I didn't realize at this point that I was taking the weird fourth base, by the way. Like, I already realized at this point that he probably had the one on the right side, which really felt like a way more sensible base to take. Now, this little counterattack is doing me very well here. Sadly for me, he did siege a tank on the high ground, so that is going to be a bit tough. I'm pretty sure I just clicked on his marines and saw that he had more upgrades than me. I don't know if that's entirely true. I feel like it was 2-2 against 1-1, and that's going to be very, very tough. He still doesn't have combat shields, by the way, which is pretty funny, because earlier in the day, I forgot combat shields against Elazer, and I told you guys it's so stupid how easy it is to forget, even though it's such an important upgrade. And then now we're playing as Bunny, and he also forgot the combat shield, it looks like, at least for a long while. So yeah, I mean, case in point, right? Now we traded a couple of SCVs here. I think I probably have a better eco than him. But I do feel like my army is worse, because if you remember, my army got cleaned up, right, at the front. And there, I didn't necessarily clean up his army, but I traded. Now here I found a couple of medevacs on the back, which is extreme value. Got a couple of Vikings over here, which I don't necessarily want anymore. I think maybe now I rather would have had medevacs. The thing is that I built them because I wanted to break the siege, but I broke the siege already. So that was... yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit of a mistake by me, but to be honest, you also never really know when you are going to break the siege. Like I always say, if you can avoid stimming into a tank line, avoid it, because it hurts, okay? It really hurts. It's terrible. It hurts my soul whenever I see people attempt it. Unless for some reason it's Korean Terrans. I don't know why. I feel like that's like their best trait in StarCraft. Like, they're good at many things, but if there's one thing they're particularly good at is breaking siege lines, because I see them do it. And it looks like it's possible. And then you try it yourself, and you trade 77 Marines for one tank and dealing 12 damage on the second one. You know, it's just... it's probably... you guys probably thought, oh, I thought it was just me. No, it's just... I don't know. I don't know how they do it. Now here, I luckily for me, still had my tanks in a really good position. So this is going to be a pretty efficient trader, actually. Lost a lot of Marines there already. Now, this is a little bit of a tough one. I was sure that I was going to break him here. I guess the bottom part of my Marines just walked in a little bit too awkwardly. So that was a slight misjudgment by me. Did get a decent amount of damage done with those Marines on the right side. And yeah, I mean, I feel like we're back to where we have been for the most part. I feel like his mass army, if you get his army together, it's probably still stronger than mine, but our eco is probably better. Now, this is a really good fight here because we get 2 tanks for very little counter damage. If I didn't lose a crazy amount of Marines earlier, I would have really enjoyed that. Now it's just like, okay, I got it back a little bit, you know? It looked like it was going to be very, very tough, but we got it back. Now, I have a lot of money here. I didn't really want to go into air yet because it didn't feel like the kind of game where you would go into air. I feel like you go into air when it's like a little more stable, you have like a lot of tanks, you know exactly where your opponent's army is, where everything is at, and then you go into air. Here, I didn't really feel like it was that kind of moment yet, so at this point I decided to drop the main base. He's going to be ready to deal with it. Sadly for me, he was in position there. Would have been very nice to attack that base before it was a planetary. Good move there by Bunny. He actually chased my medevac with 2 medevacs so he could drop on top of them. Together with the reinforcements that made sure that he was able to shut that down pretty easily. And now it was time for me to move out for my big attack. Now here I made a little bit of a misjudgment. I had like 10 tanks in total, and I thought I had like 8 or 9 with me, but I only had 6. There's a little bit of lag from the observer here. It's not going to be that long, so don't worry. I guess I can take this time to tell you that you are fantastic, and I hope you have a lovely and peaceful day. and now we get back to destroying Marines. So I was gonna go for an attack here, and I really thought that I brought more tanks. But sadly, it's only 6, so this is going to be a little bit scary. He also has a very well-placed sensor tower there, which is annoying. Now, he is going to have to come back for this, as you can tell. He has a big blob of army moving down, and this was really unfortunate for me. This planetary finished at the perfect time. Now I'm gonna get Omega surrounded. 2 of my tanks are still shooting the planetary. My army gets surrounded, and the worst thing about this is, guys, is that I lost a lot of siege tanks. I realized later that my big advantage here was that I had, I think, 11 siege tanks against 6 or something like that. But they were just all at home, so it was pretty even. I had a bit too much confidence in my army, and now he might be able to push through. You can see his army over there with the multiple scans we're doing. TVT, as per usual, is just a massive scan simulator. So, yeah, all the scan size, you can see there's 2 more scans there, what I say. It's pretty crazy. So I was wondering how to play this. This is the difficulty if you lose your army, and in particular if you lose too many tanks, is that they can kind of just go where your tanks are. And so I had to bring them back. I decided to go for a very big counter drop. Use my tanks to defend at home. I have a lot of Marines on his main base that can hold me off there. I think I already lost 1 medevac on the minimap of that big drop that I didn't realize, by the way. So now we're going to be dropping our Marines off here. This should be 3-3 against 3-3, I believe. I hope we're not a set of upgrade down. Going to be able to kill these medevacs as well, but his army is still breaching my main at the same time. There's a tank over there. Planetary is blocking it, and we were forced to tap out 50 supply down. Games 2 and 3 were once again very different from the first game. The second game was very close to a game I had against Ryung in the qualifier, where I went for a 5 Reaper 3 Hellion attack, did a lot of damage, and reactively made a second starport. I pushed out with my extra starport units, and despite taking a sloppy fight, my army was so big that I won the game instantly. In game 3, I went for a pure instinct call. On one hand, I wanted to go for the same build as in game number 2 because it felt safe and strong. On the other hand, I didn't want to play scared, so I just did what I wanted to do, a proxy marauder build. And it worked absolutely disgustingly. In the first 2 games, I could already tell Bunny was playing greedy and that he only scouted on and off. In this game, we went for a Reaper expansion without scouting at all. He was playing it relatively safe against proxy Reapers by making extra Marines, but sadly for him, he had nothing to defend the proxy Marauder and died pretty much instantly. After this, our score was 2-2, and since we had a fantastic map score, we advanced in 2nd place. Creator took 1st place in the group going 4-0. After that was me advancing above Nice, Elazer, and Bunny. I hope you all enjoyed this little mix of cheesy gameplay and a bit of more serious gameplay. Thank you all for watching, and see you all for the next one. Adios.